welcome to the Diary of a CTO. My guest today is Andrey Kozlov, Chief Technology Officer for OneFS Wealth. Andrey, sir, how are you?
Thanks, Guy. Thanks for having me. Yes, very well. Thank you.
Good stuff. Good man. So, Andrey, you've spent, close to 2 decades now building highly complex, scalable mobile applications. You performed engineering and architectural roles in the likes of Betfair, Trainline and BCG, and now heading up technology at OneFS Wealth. So, where you're building a very innovative wealth management product. So, lots to talk about today. Thank you very much for joining us. And before we get into the leadership piece and start talking about everything you're building at OneFS, let's talk a little bit about your journey and let's start at the beginning, if we may. So, talk us through, how did you get into tech in the first place, and what have been the key chapters, I guess, along the way that have led you to where you are today as a CTO?
Happy to do so, yes. As any kid, I like to play with the tech stuff and blocks and things like this. And it was kind of natural to step into technology at university and so on. But honestly, that's happened by chance because initially I was planning to spend a bit more time in the physics and the sciencey type of things and activities. And in university where I'm from, they've been just opening up the section when they teach like tech and computer science and programming stuff. And I think, been like a third year, which they only do it. So relatively new things, but it was quite exciting to try and see how things are going. And yeah, I end up actually having and working as this trade for now, yes, as you mentioned, a couple of decades now.
Cool. Did you find that you immediately, when you started doing the coding, the programming piece, did you fall in love with it straight away, or was it something you had to work at?
No, I liked it straight away, even like from the school, because we had some sessions when we've been doing like a block scheme, block diagrams, and actually constructing algorithms just on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
And so it was always quite exciting. And I've started doing this, and I've been in this from years when we just had BASIC and the Pascal, and been doing like graphic development just basically with bits on the computer. And yeah, it's kind of just grown into this. And still up to this date, I like the challenge. I like the overcoming certain bits and pieces, and just general any tech stuff. It's quite exciting for me. Especially how tech now evolving very fastly. It's crazy.
Absolutely. I'm sure we'll be very much delving into that. So yeah, talk us through then, when you got your foot on the career ladder, what was the first role for you? And I guess, what did you choose to go into?
One of my first project, even like after university, not even after, just when I was in the last years of university, it was working on some ecology project, just a platform which were calculating pollution type of data. And it was nothing to do with mobile. It was purely C# based application and running on the Windows platform. And then Apple started releasing their exciting new iPhones. And I remember actually buying one of the first ones, sadly lost it. I would love to have it by this day. It's like a nice piece of kit, but that's where I started like looking into the more mobile tech. And yeah, it spans out quite nicely. The tech evolved, and up to these days, it's one of the biggest platforms.
Absolutely. Yeah. Did you take a conscious decision to move away from the kind of the more traditional software engineering into in the world of mobile specifically?
Yes. And one of the biggest move I've made is from that specific company I was working into the little bit more outsourcing type of company, because that was my second proper mobile development job, when I've been working on the project for different companies. And that's where that's become very exciting. As part of outsourcing culture and the companies like that you tend to work on many things and explore quite a lot of different tech stacks and options. That was really exciting times.
Yeah, I bet. Cool. And then you joined, say, companies pretty sort of tech behemoths like Trainline and Betfair. So talk us through a little bit about your experiences in those sort of very high volume, scalable platforms.
Yeah, absolutely. My first big company was the Betfair, when I was like actually part of the proper development in-house team, and we've been working on exchange application, I believe. It was almost 10 years ago. Now I think it's completely changed. And yeah, that's where you experience quite a lot of interesting tech related to high volume, pretty much almost real data flow, and you have to deal with it within the, at that time, quite limited power and resources of the mobile devices. So yeah, that's very interesting challenges. And yeah, that was interesting.
Cool, good stuff. And how do you sort of see, I know there's obviously quite a big push now towards sort of streaming architecture and like say sort of real event driven stuff, but how do you see that kind of evolution of software architecture today?
Interesting question. Yeah, it's changed significantly. Back in time, we've been just basically just plain development with the functions and procedures. Now you tend to develop things a little bit more synchronously in mind and parallel in processes and things like this. Even on the mobile devices, it's very common nowadays. The whole async approach to the programming with services is absolutely the case. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's completely different. When I changed the job to the Trainline after Betfair, that's where things I've found a bit different from consumer side of applications, because Trainline effectively a bit more user driven and the mass volume.
Yeah.
That's where we end up doing a lot of user testing and actually probing things with people. And this is completely different side of things.
Yeah.
From the betting type of companies.
Yeah, I can imagine. Absolutely. So then from there, you obviously in quite a hands-on capacity, albeit very senior in terms of engineering and architecture within those two companies, and you moved to talk us through that journey of how you joined OneFS Wealth and how you found the transition into the world of the C-suite and the CTO role.
Absolutely. Between these, I was kind of in a phase of saying, oh, actually, look, I'm kind of interested in the enterprise world. And that's where I found the BCG, Boston Consultancy Group, and work a few years there, which is very interesting switch, I would tell you, and completely different focus from the consumer side of applications, because we would tend to work more on internal set of applications and platforms. And that was very nice. But that's allowed me to grow a little bit into the like architecture, a bit more team management capacity, because that's where I've been managing a few different teams together and being exposed a lot into how the backend systems works and how the integration works between different systems and clients and the front ends. And I think that was a very nice step from the experience perspective and from the just comparing two worlds, because that's completely different.
Absolutely. It's I always really enjoy advising and sort of consulting around the senior end of the market when people sort of make that transition from, very talented hands-on engineers through to leadership, because as you mentioned, it's a fundamentally different skill set,
Yes.
isn't it? So when you moved into leadership, how did you feel about your capability to do the people side, the kind of the leadership side versus the hands-on side, and were you sort of aware of any particular areas in your skill set that you kind of felt were maybe weaknesses that you had to work on to improve?
Absolutely. I think one of those things for me was not patience, it's probably wrong word, but something to be able to delegate and to be able to trust other people to do stuff. Because when you do this for a long time, you know things, you know what will work, what not gonna work. You pretty much kind of feel it before it actually happens. And it's very difficult to see and allow actually people to do these mistakes before they realize, and you kind of pointing out and discussing why this happened, things like this. So this type of shift is quite difficult, I think, but it's very interesting. It's where you learn to kind of delegate a bit more, trust people, work with them alongside rather than, dictate, doing anything with saying, yeah, do this and do that. It's a bit more dialogue happens, a bit more idea exchange, and that's very good things.
Do you feel it's important for somebody to learn mistakes in their own way and go through that journey of learning versus, a more maybe dictatorial methodology of managing people and
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It's different experience. I can see it on my kids, to be honest with you. It's you need to allow to do certain mistakes to people. It's better from the experience and learning perspective when someone tell you, okay, yeah, you don't do that, you will end up. It's tend to be forgotten, but when you experience in this, when you kind of, touch this fire and it burns you a bit, that's a bit more kind of significant from the experience perspective. You tend to remember, you tend to learn better from these type of things.
Yeah.
But obviously, on the positions like that, on the CTO level, on the even manager level, it's very kind of trick balance, I found, to still allow people to do certain mistakes and maybe finding things and learn from this, but avoiding kind of big downsides of it and bigger mistakes. That's where the proper conversation, discussion, and actually, thought process and actually encouraging people to think about what's happening and how to do stuff. That's very important.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. That's a huge part of the CTO role, isn't it? To empower, but in a controlled manner. So now you're in the CTO role. Talk us through, what do you feel are some of the most valuable qualities and attributes of a CTO and technology leader today?
Yeah, I was thinking a lot about this, and I think definitely patience and being open to different ideas, because you may have think and you have experience, certain bits and pieces, but there is a different people, different backgrounds, different experience. It's very valuable to be open and to listen and make a decision based on different input of data, because you can't just be self-contained and pretend you know everything. You don't. And one of the valuable quotes I still know and I still keep repeating myself, someone told from one of you, I don't remember who actually, I know that I know nothing. That's been my kind of not motto, but one of the driven things. I know that I have a gaps in my knowledge, and I open to kind of learning capabilities, learning possibilities, and learning from people, learning from my experience. I'm still trying to be hands-on with stuff. It's very important, I think, in any technology role, to not be too distant from what's happening on the ground. Otherwise, you risk to just don't understand what's happening. You don't understand people and lose this touch with the tech things.
Absolutely, especially to your point earlier about the speed of which the technology market is evolving at the moment, right? It's like you'd be naive to assume that you know everything and it's going to stay that way, because the one thing for certain now is that it isn't, right? It's constant change is coming. But the more I do this podcast and the more I speak to successful CTOs, I do really see that core thread of an element of, I think, humility and self-awareness being a really strong trait in good leaders at the end of the day. I think people want to see that a little bit more in management and leadership, that element of maybe pragmatism, vulnerability, possibly. I think that's such an important trait to have. And other than that, are there any other sort of demonstrable qualities that you try to embody day to day within your team?
I definitely try to foster a bit more like responsibility. So people take the responsibility, take the end-to-end delivery process in their hand. I like to see that from especially people who want to grow and want to be on the leadership positions. That's, I think, a very important quality. But in the same time, you mentioned all this, like, yes, be a bit more kind of humble, I would say, right? Open to learning. I found it is very tricky, because especially on the leadership positions, there is always hard choices. There is always something you're going to end up needing to decide and choose, and it may not be very favorable. But sometimes these decisions needs to be made for kind of greater better, let's say, right? Not all of the decisions are very easy to do.
Yeah, totally. It's again, I think it's a really important trait, isn't it, of knowing when you've got to go out a little bit on a limb and just make that decision yourself based on your knowledge, but also when to, I suppose, do it in an informed place where you've actually taken on board feedback from people as well. And obviously people feel part of that journey, going on the journey with you, I think is a massively important skill.
Definitely. It's very important to have buy-in from people. Whatever changes happen, whatever decision happens in technology happening one way or another, it's always important that people actually understand why this happens and they are on with you. Because if there is a resistance, it's not going to work.
Totally.
And we've seen this multiple times when I've been just part of the teams. And if you're proposing something or someone do something and it doesn't have, let's say, backup from the rest of the team, it's going to fail eventually.
Yeah. Goes back to your point of empowerment, doesn't it? I think empowerment and ownership.
Yeah.
If you give people that ownership, there's a much stronger intrinsic emotional buy-in to what you're working on, right? And then take a pride in it and obviously want to do the best job. So massively agree with that. Cool. Well, let's talk a little bit about the work you're doing at 1FS Wealth then. So tell us a little bit about your current role, the day-to-day, what you're building, and go from there.
Yeah, it's very exciting, and I found it's one of the areas which is currently growing very fast, but there is not a lot on the tech space right now covering this, because this is very, let's say, market which is still operating with the quite old tech stack. They're not really cloud aware. They operate with a lot of still spreadsheets and even paper stacks of documents. What we're doing, we're trying to, let's say, make it digital in the wealth tech for the people who have significant wealth, or family offices, what we call it, organizations. And we try to make sure they can digitalize whatever they have on assets level. They know what's happening, because that's what we found as well for a lot of our customers. They not even themselves aware of what they have and how much it worth, right? They may have house somewhere, they don't know how much it costs. They may have some other stocks in some places. Some on their family offices probably know this and manage this, but awareness on this higher level on the family offices, that's sometimes very limited. And that's what we try to tackle. So the platform we're building is essentially designed to bring everything in one place, digital space, where you can manage, when you can see all your assets, all your wealth. You can store all your documents, very important documents, and basically have this visibility and big analytical tooling and some kind of instrument to help you manage this going forward, getting some advice, what to do next, because visibility is important. Nowadays, especially in the digital area, people understand that. So without all the information on hand, it's very hard to make a decision.
Yeah.
And that's where we come up.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea for a product, and I can massively see the value it would add. And in a time that we're living in, where time is valuable, right? And being able to save that time for people to get a snapshot view of where they are against all their investments and assets is a great idea. What are some of the biggest challenges you have, I guess, with building that sort of platform to get cohesion across all of those different assets and ensure that all of the data is centralized in a correct way?
Oh, that's quite a lot. I don't know where to begin even.
If it was that easy, everyone would get it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Starting from the security and privacy, that's the first things come up when you start talking to clients and start talking to family offices. It's like, okay, can we trust you? What kind of security measures, what the privacy looks like.
Yeah, great.
That's the biggest challenge, to keep data secure, encrypted, private. You can only access it, no one else see it, but you have always kind of access to it. Another challenge we're facing right now, specifically in the wealth and the financial tech, is the connectivity, because honestly, open banking is kind of there, but wealth API is not exists. It's not that easy to get this data out of other systems.
Yeah.
Many banks don't even support open API, especially in the Switzerland and European region. UK is much better with that, we found, and US now starting catching up. But yes, if you can get access to your, let's say, Monzo HSBC bank account and get your balance, it's very hard to connect to the system where you store your assets, your investment portfolios and things like this. So that's one of the biggest challenge, but it's probably with all the companies in a similar kind of space.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, that, without giving away your secret sauce, that was probably my biggest question as to how do you do that, right? Because obviously a lot of these data sources are, I suppose, to all intents and purposes, very autonomous and impenetrable. So, yeah, what's the sort of method that you go about to employ?
range of technologies. It's again, that's one of the things when you don't really have a silver bullet solution for everything, when you have to adopt, when you have to kind of find different ways to get the data and grab it. AI plays quite a big roles in this, and I will probably say it will be even bigger in the future, because that allows a bit more smarter process of information, digitalizing your, let's say, paper documents. You can just photo it, upload it to the LLM model, and it will grab all your data and upload in the relevant place with the smarter processing. So we use a lot of these. We use a lot of aggregator solution, which is for Open API and for other wealth institutions. So it's very dependent on the who we work with, how we approach it, and we have a couple of direct communications with the wealth institutions and the banks where we connect to then get the data for the customer. So yeah, various of technologies, and that's where it's quite exciting to try to kind of say, bring the order to this house.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you mentioned AI, because I guess we've been speaking for nearly 20 minutes and we haven't talked about AI yet, which is incredible. Must be a record. But no, it's totally can understand where you're coming from there. That you can clearly see the value that AI could bring into this type of application. But I suppose there's always going to be that conversation around, it's a bit of a juxtaposition between operating in a very highly regulated environment and building that type of application, but also embracing the latest and greatest, possibly relatively untested, unproven AI technology. So how do you go about that process as a CTO, evaluating, embracing and implementing AI within the company, on that basis of still making sure you're doing it responsibly in a regulated environment?
Absolutely. The first of all, it's awareness. So we're making sure that customers aware of what's going on, how the data is used, what are they sharing with the LLM model. And second of all, making sure the AI engines and whatever services we use behind the scene, they're also private. So we're not sharing data with anyone third party.
Right.
It's all privately hosted, cloud organized, so data stays in control. So that's mostly important for us and for any businesses, as you say, in highly regulated environments. Control of the data and making sure it's secure. That's basically about it. But yeah, we use a lot of tailored AI engine trained specifically for the wealth tech purposes and for the financial operations. And yeah, that's quite exciting world we're living in. And we see these trends and we see how it's getting evolved. And now we're talking about agentic AI, which is really big now everywhere. So simple LLM, which you can talk to and interrogate through the chat, it's not enough anymore. You want something automatic. You want something which gonna be like not a human replacement, but helpful assistant, let's say, which can do certain simple bits and pieces and save your time in a general scale.
Absolutely. And especially when you look at the qualities of AI in terms of what it does, obviously with vast computational power, ability to, spot trends and that kind of thing. Obviously within the investment world, it's just a natural, obvious slam dunk, isn't it, in terms of a use case. But as I said, always treading the fine line between privacy, regulation, it's a tough balancing act, but no, really, really interesting. So what would you say have been some of your biggest challenges that you faced throughout your career? It doesn't necessarily have to be within one FS context, or it could be, of course, but yeah, what would you say they've been and how did you overcome them?
I think one of the biggest one is the switch between change in the roles between actually being very hands-on, like a part of dev team, and then trying to actually look at all of this from a little bit more like a bird's eye view from external, in a manager capacity, because that's where the shift of the mindset, because you tend to kind of think about, I can just do it, let me handle it. I'll just sit and write it, right? And this is different. That's where you learn to delegate through the hard kind of lessons as well, right? And making mistakes in the same way, right? But learning and eventually, becoming a little bit better, let's say, manager in this sense.
Fair enough. And do you feel as a CTO now, you mentioned earlier, the more I know, I'm gonna misquote you now, but the more I know, the less I know. And I think that, again, that's a great trait. But do you feel as a CTO now, you sort of have to continuously work to further develop, further grow? And if so, what sort of sources do you draw upon to help further develop you and educate yourself?
Oh, absolutely. Even more now, I think, because when you tend to just focus on your development area, let's say just like mobile tech or server-side development, it's quite narrow in terms of, yes, it's a broad set of technologies, but you tend to, could say, focus on one or a couple of tech stacks and you work with it quite deliberately. You know end-to-end things. When you take in these type of roles and overall like C-suite role, people expect you know everything. People expect to come to you with the questions, how to do that, what we use here. Let's decide on, I don't know, microservice architecture versus other type of things. And you will be expected to know this stuff, or at least advise and talk about this intelligently and AI and what's come with it, right? All the agentic AI, RAG models and whatever comes with it. That's a big challenge. And as you mentioned, sources, I mean, nowadays it's very hard to avoid any technological sources. You have a whole internet in front of you. I mean, I remember back in our days, you go to the library if you want to know something. Internet wasn't that accessible. Now it's very easy. There's a bunch of different blogs which do, and a lot of different sources. I think YouTube was very helpful nowadays. There's a lot of materials over there if you want to learn specific topic or at least familiarize yourself with the certain technologies. This is really good.
Yeah. Are there any people you follow in particular that either kind of have a YouTube channel or a blog that you just resonate with?
Good question. I can't remember from the top of my head, but yeah, I can send you a few.
We'll put it in a link.
Yes.
Yeah, just always interesting because you kind of, you speak to people that are super successful in their own rights, but to your point, those people do work hard to stay on top of, stay at the top of their game. And I think it's always good to share, ideas on people that you found.
Some useful books as well on the management and on the overall like journeys. I think a lot of people probably quoting Steve Jobs' book, which is quite interesting in his own right, like how he's gone through this way and what he done with the Apple. I think one of the huge examples over here. And yeah.
I think Steve Jobs, I mean, it must be to do with my social media algorithm, but I do get a lot of those kind of Steve Jobs, performances on stage crop up. But, people use the word visionary very often, don't they? But yeah, my God, he was, wasn't he? And I think he was the first technologist that I saw, and going back now and watching a lot of those sort of older videos that really understood the relationship innately between tech and product. And, how we're seeing the products and, software engineering lines merging together more and more now within businesses. He just saw everything through that kind of product lens, which obviously made him a true visionary, in my humble opinion.
Indeed, yeah.
Let's talk a bit about then with the rise of AI and how you see this impacting the world of work. And I'm interested to understand from your perspective as a CTO, has it altered the advance in LLMs, Gen AI, and, so on and so forth? Has it altered your perspective on how you structure your teams and how you will grow your team in terms of, recruiting and scaling the business? The reason I mention that is we've definitely seen a bit of a shift from certain companies where they might now not necessarily invest as heavily at the more junior end of the spectrum because they feel they have that functionality and logic within an LLM maybe that they would get for free, right? And I'm not saying that's the right approach, but I've definitely seen a lot of maybe more cash strapped businesses in the first instance look to employ that sort of strategy. But obviously for a company like yourself, that's clearly invested in building a very robust and respectable product, how do you see that landscape evolving?
Sure. Yeah, it's a very interesting question. I can also see this kind of shifts, but in my personal opinion, it's quite dangerous path in a sense. And we see it, we experimented with a lot of this stuff. And honestly, just openly speaking, yes, we do use a lot of AI tech behind the scene. But in my preference and experience, it's much better when you use it as a, again, helpful tool. Let's say we look at this as a tool rather than replacement for anyone specifically, because it tends to make a mistake, and it does a lot of mistake when you just done it like you need to know specifically how to use it and how properly use it, because building the prompts, advising like specifically some instructions of how to do certain things, AI, it's a job on its own,
Yeah.
if you think about it.
Well, prompt
And
engineering, right?
yes, yes,
It is a job
exactly.
now.
Yeah, because it can't come up with the things you just, hold your hand and just say, oh my God, where it's coming from. Uh, and you end up cleaning more of this mess after it's actually done the job rather than spending actually building something. So it's a very niche balance right now between actually using it correctly rather than trying to invest too heavily in it. And I would not just drop everything and say, oh yeah, let's have AI, couple of agents running and do things, and we have just few people monitoring them. No, not at all. No, I'm fine with my team using this as a helpful instrument, let's say to help with pull request review, to help with certain activities, writing unit tests, or even day-to-day development activity. It's great boost. If you do it properly, if you work properly with it, it's give you a nice kind of upper hand. And I think that's the future for a lot of developers. If you just do it manually, you will be probably behind everyone else who using it intelligently and who using it as a helpful instrument in your career. But it needs a lot of input. It needs a lot of maintenance. But it's still helpful. It's much easier to use it than write everything yourself. Very simple exercise of refactoring certain class. You know what you're going to do with it. You have it in your mind. If you put it in nicely in instructions, AI will do it for you quite nicely. But you still have to look into it. You have to verify it. You have to know this stuff anyway yourself to do it. And we've seen this in the pull request review. It's misses stuff. It's come up with some crazy suggestions sometimes. So you can't trust everything. And in the same time, yeah, it's a helpful tool.
Yeah,
I always kind of think about it as just another tool in your arsenal.
Yeah, exactly. I massively agree. Everything you said there. The quote I always use is, "I see it as a tool, not a solution." It's not an end product at the end of the day. I mean, it does. I do feel very sorry for graduates entering into the world of work now, because they're coming in at a time when the speed of change is so unbelievably exponential compared to maybe what's happened for previous generations, that it must be very worrying, sort of taxing to think about, well, what is the world? I know you've got a couple of kids. I've got a couple of young kids as well. So what is the world of work going to look like when they enter into it? But I think, it's probably a natural trait, isn't it, that all generations worry about the next generation that comes, but they find their own way, right? And I think they're a lot more open to, they've lived in a digital world, a lot more open to using these tools in a far more effective and productive way than probably the previous generation.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
well, yeah, I can see it in my kids. They like much better with any tech than even I am, like especially my younger one. My daughter, she's using AI. She's using AI for like helping with homework, helping with come up with ideas. And I think that's much easier for them. That's much easier mindset. I mean, maybe we as a bit more older generation sometimes struggle with adopting these new technologies, and we're skeptical for the good reason, I believe, right? We learn and we watch all this like TV shows like Black Mirror and things like this. That's spawn imagination, and you kind of can see the dangers of overusing these type of technologies if you're just gonna, use it uncontrollably. But they a bit open to this. They easy to get into it. They know these things from young age. And I think that would be it's much better for them, will be.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I still think there's this big reach at the moment where we're obviously very much, on that hype curve for AI, but people often try and anthropomorphize technology and AI, and we've all seen Terminator, and everyone has those kind of T100 moments in the back of their mind. But I still feel that there is a relatively surface level understanding of what LLMs are and what they actually do, and actually what constitutes AI. And until there's I feel personally, a seismic shift away from the current transformer-based architecture that we have today of what an LLM is, we're a million miles away from, that's not going to get us to the T100s, right?
No.
Thankfully.
Yes. And that's true, actually. And you can see it in the business level. Sometimes the people tend to think about AI as some kind of magic instruments, which can think and can do stuff, and it's easy to work with. And that's also kind of part of the job, I think, to try to explain people that at the end of the day, that's just a good language machine. We have T9, we had a T9 back then, like Motorola phones. That's essentially just next evolution of it. It's very smart evolution. It's have a huge knowledge base, which we can draw on up onto, like from internet or from all the sources. But at the end of the day, it's not thinking. It's not gonna be replacing any like real thought process. It works on instructions, and as good as your instruction will be, the better will be outcome. But it will not just magically solve stuff for you.
Yeah, absolutely. For now.
For now,
thankfully. Cool. Let's talk a little bit about then. We mentioned your viewpoint, which I totally agree with, around, you still need to take the mature approach of investing in people, because at the end of the day, AI is a tool. It's not the solution. But when it comes to building the culture for your team, and when you hire into your team, what traits and characteristics do you aspire to see in people, when hiring professionals into the team, not necessarily from a technical, perspective, but sort of values, personality, what traits and characteristics are important for you?
Sure. Definitely, I prefer people to be, as we told in the beginning, right, to take responsibility, being vocal in the opinion, be mindful, and a bit open-minded, because there's a bigger team, you will have more opinions, and it's will gonna lead to the proper conversation, rather than sitting there and just waiting for the tasks to be thrown on you and do your work. I would love to see more encouragement, more dedication towards what you're doing. So, and yeah, definitely experience in the field, in the specific areas. When we're looking for the professionals in the certain specific bits, it's definitely quality of knowledge of what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I massively agree with that. I think innovation, passion, they are as we talked about, the one constant is going to be change moving forward. So I think the skills piece is going to become less and less important, in all honesty. I think it's the actual outlook people have, the attitude they have to actually just understanding stuff, right? Problem solving, and being passionate about and tenacious about finding the solution.
Yeah,
I think is
definitely
is such an important trait these days. Okay, perfect. Well, look, really enjoyed the conversation today, Andrey. I think you kind of shared a huge amount of value, but I like to draw to a close every episode of a podcast, which you may know by now, with the same question, which is, what would you say has been, you gave a very strong nugget of information right early on in the more I know, the less I know. But if I could push you for another one, what would you say has been your one favorite piece of advice that you've received throughout the journey that has stuck with you, that you'd care to pass on to your fellow human?
If I want to choose one, I would say be open to learn new stuff. Now age changing very fast, and if you're gonna stay behind and just focus on what you already know and don't evolve, it's gonna be tough in the future. So yeah, just definitely be open to the new trends, new suggestions, keep learning, and yeah, that's what brings success.
Yeah, love that. I think that's a fantastic way to encapsulate the conversation today. It's certainly the take-home message that I've taken from our conversation. So thanks again for coming on. Really enjoyed the conversation. Wish you all the very best with OneFS, and hopefully I'll be one of your clients one day, but not for a while.
Thanks for having me. Thanks.
No worries. And for everyone tuning in, please do like, subscribe, and share the episode with anyone that you feel it would be valuable to. And look forward to seeing you again on the next episode of the Diary of a CTO podcast.